military logistics into Iraq for the Allied forces, but they needed to bring humanitarian aid, and they want to start doing that as soon as possible, as Jason just said as well. And so what they had hoped, because really Qasr is only a few kilometers across the border from Kuwait, and they had hoped to be able to take it very, very rapidly. And there have been certain number of defections. We've been told that they've got, or rather surrenders, about 450 Iraqis have surrendered, both between Qasr and the Al-Faw Peninsula in this operation. They are now being treated as prisoners of war. So they have had certain amount of surrenders, but they are also getting this, in some cases, fairly stiff resistance. But again, when we ask the commanders, is this something that is going to be disabling? Is it going to keep you pinned down for very long? They said, no, we have superior firepower. We plan to have this wrapped up by the end of the day. Of course, things often don't go to plan, as you know, in the military in terms of timelines, but they don't believe that this is something that is overwhelmingly difficult for them to put down. They're small, isolated pockets. In some cases snipers, in some cases groups of Iraqis. And as I say, they're never quite sure exactly who these Iraqis are, because in some cases they are in civilian clothes, and then we're told they find, weapons on them and military badges and this and that. So it is obviously elements of the Iraqi army. But remember, down here in the southern part, this is not Republican Guard territory. This is regular Iraqi army, and both the British and the American forces do not believe that these forces can seriously challenge them.
And you were talking about the artillery. We want to put up a graphic now so people can see what kind of helicopters are flying in the air above Qasr. We believe they're AH-1W Cobra attack helicopters, and 2 crew members on board. There we go, we have the graphic now. 20-millimeter cannon, rockets, and missiles. It's sort of a modified version of a Vietnam War area attack helicopter. So 2 on board each helicopter you're seeing, and according to Jason Bellini, these are American helicopters in the skies.
Yeah, Christian, I'm interested to know, I'm sure with any troops you have talked to, I'm sure they will tell you going to house is a scary notion indeed. We're seeing these helicopters flying around. The Cobra is obviously an extraordinarily powerful weapon. How effective are they, though, in this kind of small-scale, sporadic building-to-building sniping?
Well, we saw those 4 Cobras overhead here at the port. They sort of came into here and then moved off down to do those operations. But one of the UK troops that we just talked to said, oh, look at those. They're going to take care of the snipers. So they obviously are being used to pinpoint target as well, and to try and suppress any kind of enemy fire, Iraqi fire, that's coming up from these isolated pockets.
Christian, we had talked a lot about Qasr as the endpoint for humanitarian assistance, and that is something coalition troops are sort of pushing, getting that message out. How soon and how realistic is it that they plan to get humanitarian assistance moving through this port?
Well, they had really wanted to do it very, very soon, but what we're being told is that they may, given, as long as all of this is secured, given perhaps about 48 hours to start, but that would not be large scale yet. There are things like, what the military has in terms of humanitarian aid, MREs, food supplies, things like that, but they're obviously wanting to bring in any kind of NGO or UN stockpiles, World Food Program, and other governmental aid into this southern area. The whole point of what they're trying to do here is not destroy or not go into urban areas if they don't have to. I don't think they expected to get quite the resistance they did here in Qasr, but they're hoping to be able to leave these urban areas, these civilian populations. We're being told those are not military targets because they want them to be welcomed in. They want the US or UK forces, whoever it is in various areas, to be welcomed in. But they had to take Qasr, even though it is a town and a port, because overall Qasr was a strategic objective and they needed to have it under control in order to bring in humanitarian aid.
And Christian, once it's under control, who will remain there to make sure it stays under control? Will it be British forces?
Well, Yes, it will be British forces, and in fact, we're not able to give you pinpoint future operations, but just in a broad sense, I can say that the British do have control of the Al-Faw Peninsula. They are the commanding unit of this U.S. Marine unit, and eventually the U.S. forces, both Marines and others, are going to be moving on up north and then peeling off west to go up towards Nasiriyah and Baghdad. Basically, the southern area, including the oil fields, Basra area, down here, the strategic economic targets, those will all be under UK command, the British command down here.
And Christian, as you well know, not the first time British troops have been in that region. Many years ago, a long time ago, another generation, another era, there were British forces in the Basra area. Christian, I want to ask you, in the troops you talk to, whether British or American, is there any frustration at the kind of operations that are going on? And what I mean by that is that a lot of observers who are looking at this operation here in the United States are remarking upon the fact that this is military action which is largely being based on a political objectives, the political objectives being obviously decapitation of the Iraqi leadership, but not wanting to, as you just mentioned, destroy too much of the infrastructure of Iraq. I imagine there are some troops who might be wishing they could just go full force and it would be, in a sense, easier and safer for them. Are you hearing that from any troops, or do they say anything about it?
No, but certainly the people who brief us and the commanders are saying that this is our objective, to be able to do what we need to do without, as you say, causing damage to either the economic or the environmental infrastructure, and of course particularly without doing any harm to civilians. In fact, we were just again told today by the commanders that I mentioned earlier, both the U.S. Marine and the British commander here, that they are being extremely careful here in Qasr when they see women or children. They're being very careful about how they respond, because that's the last thing they want to do, to be seen as or to incur any kind of civilian casualties. Obviously, it's very difficult when you're in a battle area, and sometimes there will be casualties, but they say that that is one of their obviously prime objectives, to keep those casualties to a very minimum. And just to note on the British and UK joint operation here, it is actually very rare to have US forces under British command, and that is what's happening in this Qasr operation.
And Christian, talking about the POWs, the prisoners of war taken there, what more can you tell us about that? Do you have any number, any specifics? Yes, 450 have been taken in the Qasr and Al-Faw Peninsula region. Most of those taken around Qasr, not just in the town, but even yesterday as they were coming in from the north, they took surrenders. We are not allowed to see them because the Geneva Conventions prohibit us being able to do that, taking pictures of them. They are being treated as prisoners of war. Again, the total number, we've been told, is about 450. The total number of troops, U.S. and UK combined, in this southern operation is about 6,000.
Christian, the picture we're seeing of you over your left shoulder looks like port facilities. You are in the new port versus the old port where Jason Bellini is, where there's different kind of action. Can you tell us a little bit about how far a distance is it from the new port where you are to the old port? How far is it?
It's not massively far. This is quite a contained area. I haven't been up to the old port, but when we just landed in a helicopter, I saw the aerials, and it's not a huge distance, and the town is not hugely far away. And just to give you some perspective, this is an urban area, the part that is urban, the town, the maximum about 4,000 residents, so it's not a huge place, this, by any stretch of the imagination. And just the numbers of troops that I gave you, 6,000 troops are involved. It shows you the proportions of what we're dealing with, and clearly the US and UK troops have the advantage not only in numbers but in the weaponry and in their ability to fight.
Okay, it might be a silly question, but why do they call it Newport and Old Port?
Well, because one is new, and it is the big one that is the big commercial, newer, of course, everything's relative. This is the one that's mostly used for the big commercial operations that they want to be able to do, and certainly to bring in the kinds of quantities of humanitarian aid.
And another question about the people who live in Qasr. Are they hiding out in their homes? I mean, what's the mood of just the townspeople?
Well, I asked the commanders that, and he said they saw many people leaving. So I think one might find when one gets into the town that there may not be a huge number of residents left at this moment. They may be leaving to just get out of the way, and what we're being told is mostly those who are still there, these isolated pockets of resistance, by presumably elements of the military forces. But again, to re-emphasize, this part is not Iraqi Republican Guard. It's not elite forces. It's the regular Iraqi army. And in most of the other areas, they have seen these people mostly surrender and choose not to fight. In Qasr, there has been slightly more resistance than they expected, and they say, dealing with it. They expect fully to have it dealt with by the end of the day, but of course we'll wait and watch and monitor that.
Christian, just so we're informing our viewers who are just joining us, we are seeing you on the left-hand side of our screen in the new port in Qasr. On the right-hand side of our screen is a broader view, a larger picture of Qasr. We are seeing intermittently helicopters moving across the horizon. Those helicopters, Cobra attack helicopters, looking for pockets of resistance, as Christian has reported. Perhaps snipers, Iraqis dressed perhaps at one time in military garb, now apparently in some cases in civilian garb. Christian, recount for our viewers who are just joining us at this soon after the top of the hour here, how this operation has proceeded. It has been going on since I was sitting in this chair some, I believe, 20 hours ago. How long has it taken? How has it moved through the city from one port to another? Tell us a little bit of an overview of the past 20 hours or so.
Well, as I say, they started to come in and to try to take Qasr about that time, and they started to, as we were told by the commanders, take surrenders on the northern part of the town. And as they tried to move in, and there different elements of attack, if you like. We've seen elements of the UK Marines basically came on shore on boats. Their boats sort of parked. You can't see them, but outside, just beyond, right there, the edge of the port there. So they've had them come in from there. They've had them by helicopter, mostly in that fashion. And they've been trying to get this town because, and mostly the port, it's the port that's the important part, in order to bring in the humanitarian supplies that they want to do. Again, Qasr is Iraq's biggest commercial port, deep water port here, and it's in southern Iraq. It's the waterway leads out into the Persian Gulf, and
Christian, we're just we're just getting word that journalists were told to put on their gas masks. Well, we're not sure whether it's the new port or the old port, and we want to get that information now. Do we have it yet? Is it? We do have it. David, do you have the information?
Apparently,
the new port.
According to Abu Dhabi TV.
Not where Christian is.
According to Abu Dhabi TV, Christian, this is what's going on. According to Abu Dhabi TV, some journalists have been asked to put on gas masks, not in the area you are in. We're not sure exactly the area this was in, but we're told it's not where you are. But this, according to Abu Dhabi TV, some journalists apparently have been asked to don gas masks. Are you hearing anything of that on the ground?
No, not here, but this is not unusual. Perhaps, I haven't heard about that in Qasr, but certainly in the other positions that we've been over the last 24 hours or so, whenever there's any kind of signal or fear that there'll be a scud or whatever, we keep getting these alerts and everybody has to don gas masks and go into trenches. This is not an unusual occurrence, but it's not happening here where I am right now.
We just saw a group of people walking behind you. Are they look like military people. Could you tell us about them?
Yeah, there are military people here. There's the elements, as I say, of the 15th U.S. Marine Expeditionary Unit, and also the British unit, which is called 3 Commando, and it is the commander of 3 Commando, which is overall charge of the Marine unit here, and which is commanding this operation. So this port does have both U.S. and British forces here at the moment.
Christian, there had been a picture several hours ago which circulated quite widely on television in the United States of what appeared to be a U.S. Marine hoisting an American flag shortly after in Qasr. Shortly after that, the reports went out that they were asked to take down that flag, obviously it being a desire not to seem to be an occupying force. I assume you're not seeing a lot of flags flying where you are right now.
No, but we did hear about that story, and it's not unusual for the U.S. to put up flags when they go various places, but we were told, for what it's worth, the British weren't too happy about that. They wanted to keep the appearance, as you say, of occupying a place, and certainly of maintaining Iraq's sovereignty. This is still Iraqi territory, not U.S. or U.K. territory. So the symbolism of that flag was considered not what they wanted to project at this moment, and in due course that flag came down.
Christian, we're going to let you go right now. Of course, you'll stick around for more reporting later. We're going to leave the picture up now of Qasr so that we can monitor what's going on. Right now, we want to check in with Walt Rogers, who is, of course, with the 7th Cavalry. At last check, they had stopped. Walter, are they on the move again?
Not yet, Carol. A few moments ago, the commander of the Apache Troop of 7th Cavalry drove off down the road behind me in his tank. I believe he was going out to survey the damage done after the U.S. commanders ordered up an artillery barrage of an Iraqi position of undetermined size down this road. We're not sure how many kilometers, but certainly close enough for us to hear those 155 shells going off. As I say, the tank commander drove down the road. Behind me, in the distance, you can see the panorama there, and that panorama somewhere out there was an Iraqi detachment, unknown size. It's been called pockets of resistance, but it was of enough concern that the commanders decided not to send the 7th Cavalry Apache Troop further down this road at this point. Now, there have been constant helicopter reconnaissance flights over the area after the artillery barrage landed, and but apparently it's the Iraqi detachment, which had indicated a hostile intent, decided that it was still going to put up a fight. That being the case, we can still hear the occasional 155 millimeter shell fired by a Paladin self-propelled gun roaring over our heads and then down, as you can see, into the distance there. The 7th Cavalry, 3rd Squadron, 7th U.S. Army Cavalry is intent on going down this road. This road points north, and north is, of course, the road to Baghdad. But they have taken what we would call a prudent pause here. There was no point in sending these tanks from the Apache Company and then Bone Crusher and Crazy Horse as well down this road if indeed the Iraqis had set up an ambush. You wouldn't call this serious resistance so much because the Iraqis only got off a few shells. None of them at us here in the Apache Company. Most of them were fired back towards Bone Crusher. Nothing was hit. Nobody was hit. No casualties. But that indicated hostile intent of a known Iraqi force up ahead. And so the Army called up its big guns, 155 millimeters, and they have intermittently been pounding that Iraqi position up there. There has been several surveillance. There have been several surveillance flights since. Additionally, the captain of Apache has driven off in his tank down that road to see if it's sufficiently clear now that he can return and call up the rest of his tank unit to proceed northward down this road, which, by the way, has turned to quagmire. One of the soldiers was joking a few minutes ago after it had begun raining and the road turned to mud. If it ain't raining, he said, the Army ain't training, and that seems to be a vital ingredient of all wars, mud. That's where we are, pulled off in the mud, waiting for the road to open up. Carol?
Yeah, Walter, at least the dust died down because of the rain. A question for you, just so our viewers understand, and I understand too. That skirmish up ahead of you by Iraqi troops, what happens? The reconnaissance helicopters see them, and then is part of the 7th Cavalry sent ahead to take care of that matter, and do they come back, or do the rest of the troops join them? Tell us.
Because of earlier reconnaissance, the 7th Cavalry knew well in advance that there was an enemy detachment up that road. This was the route of travel selected by the 3rd Squadron, 7th Cavalry, U.S. Army. They knew they were there, and of course the standard operating procedure is that when the cavalry is moving forward, a detachment of helicopters, light helicopters, the Kiowas, again lightly armed, fly out, do a reconnaissance zone pattern over the suspected area. They determine if an Iraqi unit is there. It was confirmed an Iraqi unit was there. What was missing at that point was hostile intent. There was indeed some hope that the Iraqis might surrender and just get out of the way, throw down their arms. That was not the case. The Iraqis, in whatever size they are over there, decided they were going to shoot at the oncoming U.S. forces. Again, they were scattered shots, never were a threat to anybody, but having indicated hostile intent, the commander of the 7th Cavalry then ordered in his big Paladin self-propelled guns. They are probably 1.5 miles, 2 miles back of where I'm standing. They already have their coordinates from the helicopter reconnaissance flights. They pound the area with 155 millimeter shells. Those are extraordinarily lethal. Each shell has a killing radius of about 500 meters, which means if you lay out 6 shells, you're putting out a deadly front of fire, better part of a mile, I'd say.
So no face-to-face combat, Walter.
Well, certainly not for the United States. You wouldn't even call this resistance. They just indicated hostile intent. So the U.S. Commander simply decided to do a very prudent thing, tell his tanks to park on the side of the road while he called up his artillery. In terms of face-to-face contact, if indeed you're an Iraqi and you got a 155 millimeter shell bearing down on you, that's very hostile.
Oh, you're not kidding there. Let's talk about the weather for just a second. You said it has rained there and the dust has turned to mud. Is that better for the movement of troops for the 7th Cavalry?
It's kind of hard to say. Both of them are afflictions, if you will. There was extraordinary dust last night. I can give you a relative position of where we are. I'd say we were in south central Kuwait. You could probably determine that by looking at a weather map and see where the clouds are. Having said that, these roads are normally heavily clogged with dust, and then since early morning, just about dawn, there began a light rain. It's been often intermittent. It has not been what you would call a downpour, but once it hits that pumice, it just turns everything into a quagmire. And of course, you know you're in the Army when you're standing in the mud. As I said, one soldier said to me a few moments ago as he was slogging through this quagmire, if it ain't raining, the Army ain't training. And so, of course, the Army's used to that, but it's not pleasant slogging around in this stuff.
I can only imagine
that's
because
not impeding the progress of the unit.
Oh, that's good. That's good news. And Walter, I know you told us yesterday that you're literally encrusted with dirt, and it must be just so uncomfortable for the troops moving through Iraq.
It is. I was talking to a soldier an hour or two ago, and he had told me that he had been going 60 hours with no sleep. That goes pretty much for all of us. And when I looked at his face, it was heavily caked with what you and I would think on first blush was pancake makeup. In point of fact, he was just layered and layered with mud. All of us, or rather dust, and as soon as it becomes rain, as soon as the rain comes, it turns it to mud. And so everyone here is now caked in either dust or mud. There is no sanctuary from the dust in the Iraqi desert. It clogs the air filters on the tanks. These tanks have to have their air filters cleaned once a day. We clean the air filter on our Humvee vehicle once a day. Otherwise, we conk out in the desert. I'm trying to give you some idea. You can't eat a meal without having dust, consuming dust. Every ounce of clothing I have, I promise you, I will throw away as soon as I get out of here.
We can understand that.
The camera gets fouled with dust.
But it's doing a great job so far because we're seeing these amazing pictures. Walter, I wanted to ask you, too, about the frustration because I know that they go through intense training, but this stopping and starting and waiting, it just must make the tension level rise so much.
I I'm not sure that's the case. The soldiers know that their commanders are looking after them. The foolish and imprudent thing would to be send these tanks and armored vehicles down the road, knowing there was a hostile force down there and not knowing the size of it. So what the commander has done very prudently is send his helicopters out, do a reconnaissance, determine the size and the intent of the force. The soldiers would rather sit on their tanks and eat their MREs than go charging foolishly into blazing guns. No commander in this day and age would do that. This is an all-volunteer army, very professional, and the men and the equipment is being spared for what's anticipated will be a much, much larger fight the closer they get to Baghdad. So the commanders are actually acting very prudently, and the soldiers appreciate that.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that, too, because we saw the intense bombing on Baghdad. The shock and awe campaign has begun, and it was met with very little resistance. Is this a sign that the 7th Cavalry will have an easier time of things?
I think we can't go that far. Remember, the one thing they teach you in military science courses is the enemy always has a vote on the battlefield. That's what we've seen here today. The Iraqi force decided to shoot back. Does that mean the 7th Cavalry will encounter large numbers of hostile forces as they go forward? They fully anticipate that. The commander of this unit, Lieutenant Colonel Terry Farrell, said he fully anticipates the Iraqi forces to fight and fight very hard, especially as the army pushes closer to Baghdad, where Saddam Hussein, in the route of march, which we believe the 7th Cavalry will take, will encounter two huge divisions and two very professional Republican Guard divisions of the Iraqi army, the Medina Division and the Hammurabi Division. They're sitting up there waiting. This is not going to be a cakewalk, and no one here is pretending it will be. Carol?
All right, you stay safe. We're going to give you a break now, Walter. Great reporting. Thank you so much, Walter Rogers reporting.
And we should just remind our viewers that at this moment, there are still apparently pockets of resistance in the southeastern Iraqi port town of Qasr. We've had Christian Amanpour on and Jason Bellini in the last half hour. Coming up the next half hour and the next several hours, no doubt we'll be following this developing story. The significance, the thing I took away most from this, and you're looking at a live picture from Qasr right now. You don't see the helicopters there. Have been Cobra attack helicopters flying. The most ominous thing, perhaps, apparently snipers dressed as civilians with military clothing underneath. Perhaps a prophecy of things to come in Baghdad. We can only guess at this point, but some interesting information coming out of Qasr we're going to follow, and we'll be right back, I think, after this break.
Yeah, we'll be right back. You stay with us.
What about Paris?
Why not the Caribbean?
How can planning your next trip be even better?
Mexico?
Knowing your trip could be free.
Hawaii!
Yes!
Call now to request the City Advantage World MasterCard, and you can earn free award travel plus get 8,000 bonus miles. And you can use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines. You'll earn 1 mile for every dollar you spend on everyday purchases and on special purchases too. Call to request your card and 8,000 bonus miles. Plus, now your miles never expire as long as you make a purchase with your card at least once every 3 years. Soon, you'll be on the trip you planned. Use your miles to fly on over 25 top airlines, stay at the finest hotels worldwide, and drive with any major car rental company free. Call now to request your City Advantage World MasterCard and 8,000 bonus miles, and your next trip to almost anywhere could be free.
3:30 Eastern Time, just bringing you up to date on all of the developments over the past 24 hours. Coalition forces are still battling Iraqi troops in the port city of Qasr. That's going on right now. Coalition forces do control most of the city, though some Iraqi forces are holed up inside a compound that was part of the UN's Oil for Food program. American helicopters fired at forces inside that compound and around the city of Qasr. Our Christian Amanpour reports from that city that helicopters are being used to suppress the resistance and to hunt down snipers. Allied forces wanted to use the city as a base for humanitarian assistance operations. The British Central Command says the collision of two British Navy Sea King helicopters in the Persian Gulf today killed 6 British crew members and 1 American. The Pentagon adds that the choppers crashed into one another shortly after taking off from an aircraft carrier. The Pentagon has now identified the 4 U.S. Marines who were killed when their Sea Knight helicopter crashed in northern Kuwait. They are 25-year-old Corporal Brian Matthew Kennedy of Houston, Texas, 36-year-old Major J. Thomas Aubin from Waterville, Maine. Aubin was attached to the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing out of Yuma, Arizona, and 30-year-old Captain Ryan Anthony Beaupre from Bloomington, Indiana. 29-year-old Staff Sergeant Kendall Damon Watersby also died. He's from Baltimore, Maryland. Watersby, Beaupre, and Kennedy, all based at Camp Pendleton near San Diego. Well, the start of A-Day produced an awesome display of destruction in and around Baghdad. At 1 p.m. Eastern Time yesterday, the bombs and cruise missiles began to hit their targets in the Iraqi capital city. One of the main targets of Friday's bombing was the Republican Palace complex along the Tigris River. Warplanes from 38 different locations, including B-52s from England, took part in raids all across Iraq. Iraqi TV did show images of the bomb damage in the city. The Iraqi Minister of Information said that bombs ripped through the Peace Palace, and that is used to host foreign dignitaries. The Iraqi minister spoke within the past 2 hours, saying more than 200 civilians were injured in the attacks. Of course, we have no proof of that. Coalition forces bombed a suspected al-Qaeda camp inside northern Iraq. Our Kevin Seitz, located in northern Iraq, reports that area is controlled by a radical Islamic group, Ansar al-Islam. According to the Patriotic Union of Kurdistan, the United States bombed the group it believes to be linked to the al-Qaeda terrorist network. And the FBI has issued a worldwide alert for a Saudi-born man. You see his picture right here. Federal officials believed he is linked to Jose Padilla, who is an American citizen who was accused of planning to detonate a dirty bomb inside the United States. This man has also been linked with suspected planners of the September 11th attacks.
Well, Carol, about an hour and a half ago, we had a press conference from the Iraqi Information Minister, Mohammed Saeed al-Sahaf. He made various claims. Viewers can interpret them as they will. We're going to check in right now with Alain Delchevron with French TV Channel 2. He is live in Baghdad. Alain, could you hear me?
Yes.
Very good. What have you?
Good morning, good night. I don't know what exactly.
Well,
the
it's
time
it's 3:30 a.m. 3:30 a.m. here. I know it's 8 hours ahead in Baghdad where you're at. What have you seen today in terms of damage from the missile attacks, the bomb attacks so far?
Yes, you know that it's very difficult to go around and around in the city of Baghdad. We cannot go simply, and it's much tougher now, even that the way they act with us, I mean in the Ministry of Information. But there is something that can anyway not hide, is what happened in the center of Baghdad. The first bombing yesterday had as target the ministry, the presidential complex inside Baghdad. And this is of course what we can see. It has been hit, some of the building of this complex.
Have you seen how badly it was hit? I mean, we are looking at some pictures with an enormous hole in this building. It seems the building is still standing. Have you seen other buildings, how badly they were hit?
Well, some of the buildings have been hit, but we don't see really how they have been hit. We see them come from quite far away, that's all.
Okay. In this press conference, which happened about an hour and a half ago, the information minister in Iraq has made the claim that more than 200 civilians have been injured thus far in Baghdad, and he offered to take people to see these civilians. Has that in fact happened? Have you seen any of these alleged 207 odd civilians injured?
No, I didn't see anybody, but this is what the Ministry of Information said, that it's obviously true. I think the bombing was very tough. And now, at this moment, some journalists are in the hospitals precisely to see the victims of these bombings.
I think there are some people who would question whether something that the Ministry of Information said is necessarily and obviously true. He also made the claim that only 19 missiles have actually hit, and he said that they've only hit in a very small area. Does that jibe with what you have seen, what you have witnessed of the bombing thus far?
You know, this is very difficult to see. All I can say is that the bombing was very, very tough. It hits the center of Baghdad, but it hits also the suburbs of the city. But it was really very difficult to count the bombings.
I know it's really tough moving around. I know you're really not able to move. Have you been able to see anyone on the streets? What is the mood in Baghdad at this hour?
Yes, this is a surrealistic aspect of Baghdad, is that life is almost normal now. It was a very tough night, but now you have cars in the street, people working, some shops reopened. They are living quite normally after a nightmare night.
Tell us a little bit what the bombing was like for you as you watched it, as you felt it, and I imagine you did feel it. What was it like?
Sorry, I don't hear you anymore.
I'm sorry, let me just repeat the question. Tell us.
Hello?
Do you hear me, Alan? It seems.
Yes,
okay.
now again, yes.
Tell me, I'm interested just from your personal perspective, what it was like watching that bombing and feeling it. And I imagine you felt it because the repercussions, from what I understand, could be felt quite in quite a wide swath. What was it like, personally, your experience?
Oh, it was very, very tough. Especially the bombing just on the riverside. We are on the other side of the river, but it was maybe 200 meters from the bombings, and it was really very hard, very tough, and well, we've heard a lot at that time.
Were you actually able to witness it? Were you in a bunker of any kind? Where were you?
No, now I'm broadcasting from the roof of the Ministry of Information, where all the SNGs are.
Okay, I'm interested to hear how you would categorize the amount of anti-aircraft weaponry you saw in terms of the resistance that was offered. Is there anything how would you characterize it?
Well, there was a lot of anti-aircraft shootings from the Iraqi forces, but you know, we didn't see even the planes, so they were certainly very high, and any anti-aircraft defense in this case is not efficient.
How have things changed in the amount of time that you have been in Baghdad? How is today different than yesterday and the week before? I know you said it is surreal. Surreal in what sense? In what way?
Well, the city is, I could say, quite normal, as it would be, for instance, a Friday. Of course, 1 week ago it was overcrowded, difficult traffic and things like that. Now the traffic is very easy, but the city is not closed. There is no curfew, you know. The people are living more or less normally after the bombings.
All right, Alain de Chauveron with French TV Channel 2. I appreciate you joining us live from Baghdad. Thanks very much.
All right, we have some news just into the CNN Center. I believe this is from Reuters. Apparently just outside of Basra, which is only about 30 miles from Qasr, where there is another battle taking place. But west of Basra, U.S. tanks are battling Iraqi forces. We don't know much more about that, but let me read this wire copy for you. U.S. Marine tanks battled Iraqi forces on the western outskirts of Basra. That's according to a U.S. Marine captain. He said, "We are attacking Iraqi forces, all of which are west of Basra." This is from Captain Andrew Bergen. He said, "I would certainly say it is a major battle." Now we're seeing the map. As you can see, Basra very close to Qasr, and that's where American military helicopters, Cobras, are fighting pockets of resistance on the ground.
And this is a report out of Reuters Newswire, and we've just gotten that and just bringing it to you as we get it. Again, just one of the pieces of the puzzle. We know there is ongoing conflict, or at least there was some 20 or 30 minutes ago when we last checked in with both Christian Amanpour and Jason Bellini, who are in Qasr. The action that was taking place there, both in the new port, which had been secured, if we can use that term. That's where Christian Amanpour was, secured by British troops, and you are seeing a live picture from Qasr. You're seeing a ship, a tanker ship of some sort. It looks like it's actually moving a little bit. Jason Bellini was in the old port, where there are still what he described as pockets of resistance. Marines not only attack helicopters, firing on some of those, apparently firing on some of those pockets of resistance, but actually going building to building, searching rooms, trying to secure that area.
And of course, the big problem there, some soldiers, Iraqi soldiers, are dressed up as civilians. So the situation is pretty tense and pretty dangerous. Christian Amanpour also reporting from there saying that it shouldn't take long, but who knows in these situations? And we don't know.
And a pretty ominous.
If the battle going on in Basra, 30 miles to the north,
Right.
has anything to do with this. But the thing is really Allied forces expected very little resistance in both of these places.
Yeah, and it seems largely, as Christian reported, the town is largely secure, but again, it's just these pockets of resistance, and as anyone who knows much about the military will tell you, a sniper, a well-trained sniper with a well-calibrated weapon can keep at bay a very large number of troops, and we do not know that is happening right now in Qasr, but again, we're hearing of pockets of resistance. We've heard the word sniper used, and that, of course, is what the Marines are looking for right now in the Old Port area.
Quite different from what's apparently happening in Basra, because this Marine captain is saying, I would certainly say it's a major battle. They're in tanks there, so that's different from what's going on in Qasr, where most of the artillery fire is coming from the air, from military helicopters in the air. I want to go to northern Iraq now, because there has been some skirmishes there from firing on an Al-Qaeda-linked group. Kevin Seitz is there. He's going to tell us more about that. Good morning.
Good morning, Carol. Since last I spoke to you, just to remind viewers, we're in Cham Chamal, which is about 40 kilometers away from Kirkuk. This is Kurdish-held territory. It's basically free Iraq, and we butt right up against the Iraqi front lines here, the forces of Saddam Hussein. It's been kind of quiet this morning until about 15 minutes ago when the Iraqi forces have fired off 3 mortars. They've hit not too far from their own lines. We don't really understand what they're doing there, but that's the first action we've seen from this front line. Maybe it's just to let the Kurdish fighters know they're still there after the bombing of Kirkuk last night. About 8:45 last night, we saw basically a white-hot glow in the horizon over my shoulder as Kirkuk was being attacked by U.S. bombers. Now, our sources here, PUK, Patriotic Union of Kurdistan sources, tell us that it wasn't Kirkuk, the city center, that was being attacked, but the Halid military compound. That's an Iraqi military compound that houses the 1st Iraqi Legion. There's also an air base there, as well as ammunition depots. The PUK sources we have here were calling family members who were watching the attack. They didn't see bombs fall on Kirkuk. That doesn't mean there hasn't been any, but they couldn't observe any. What they did see was bombs going west towards that military base. Now, the other incident that you mentioned, Ansar al-Islam, that is the Islamic group, the fundamentalist Islamic group that Colin Powell has linked to Al-Qaeda, and has said that the Iraqi regime of Saddam Hussein, that is his Al-Qaeda connection here, Ansar al-Islam. And there were reports that 30 cruise missiles hit Ansar al-Islam locations along the border with Iran and Iraq. It's a force of maybe about 600 fighters there. They are Taliban-like, we are told. And that is happy news to the Kurds here, because they have been fighting these guys off and on. It's a left flank that they've had to watch for quite a long time. And there are reports that the Peshmerga, that's the Kurdish militia, is preparing to do battle with Ansar al-Islam either today or tomorrow. That may be an overstatement. They say they're preparing to fight sometimes and they don't do battle. But now that these targets are softened up, PUK sources tell us they'll probably go in. Another development, there's been a lot of things happening here in Kurdistan this morning and overnight. There certainly have been interesting developments south of us, but there's a whole geopolitical dynamic that's going on here. We also have reports that there are 1,000 Turkish troops that have moved into the north of Kurdistan, and that is something that the Kurds are not very happy with. They're sworn enemies with the Turks. They have been negotiating with the U.S. to keep the Turks out of the region, and it could have some significance as far as Kurdish support. The Kurds do not want Saddam Hussein. They are supporting this military action against him, but they are very concerned about Turks being in the region, and that will be their first choice to fight if they come much further down. That is what they're telling us. That is their major concern.
Kevin, a question about that. Now that Turkish forces are in there, how might that complicate things for the U.S. military?
Well, it complicates things quite a bit. It's not that they're going to halt any military action, obviously. I mean, it's well underway. It's going to complicate the political maneuvering they need to do. They need the Kurds on their side. They need their support to build a unified Iraq after this war is over. And the Kurds, although they support this military action against Saddam Hussein, they're very wary of U.S. intentions. After the Gulf War, the Kurds were told to uprise against Saddam Hussein and that the U.S. would support them. The U.S. pulled out of that promise, and the Kurds have not forgotten that. They're concerned at this point that Turkey may have a toehold within Kurdistan. They don't want that to happen. They don't want the Turks on their territory. And, this is going to be an ongoing political discussion. If the United States wants the Kurds to be a part of this coalition, they're going to have to do some damage control as far as this is concerned, perhaps, preventing the Turks from advancing any further into Kurdistan. Carol?
Yeah, negotiations with Turkey haven't exactly been stellar in the past. Kevin, I wanted to ask you about this. You talked about how the Kurds are supporting the U.S. military and they don't like Saddam Hussein. You had some interesting pictures a couple of hours ago of Iraqis seemingly dancing. Can you tell us about that?
That's right. What you were seeing, this is the day after the Kurdish New Year, Nowruz, and a lot of these guys, they're very happy with what's going on here, and this was just kind of a spontaneous dance. It was actually one of our fixers and a couple of drivers and some friends from the PUK here. And as we were preparing for a live shot, they just decided to go ahead and start dancing and singing. It's something they do here very often. I mean, the national pastime is going out for picnics in the hills and dancing. They're really colorful. They're happy. They're happy people. And what we've seen from here, that they have a very, very positive attitude despite the suffering they've endured for such a long time.
You're not kidding. I see some of them are holding white kerchiefs. Any significance to them?
Unfortunately, I'm not an authority on Kurdish dancing. I guess it's a Kurdish folk dance, and the men jump in and they have a good time, and it's great to watch them. It's great fun. I have to tell you, from a personal standpoint, they've endured a lot of hardship. We're paid and paid fairly well to do what we do, to come out to a war zone. These people, they come with us. In some instances, providing information for CNN, it's not their battle. They don't have to do it to the extent that they do. But they stay here and they suffer with us. They sleep in cement huts like us. They eat food that isn't hot. They suffer bad weather. And, they come up smiling and do the work for us. All the information that you get from us could not happen without our sources here on the ground, feeding us, talking to the PUK people, getting us information, double-checking it, and coming back to us and informing. We don't speak the language. In some ways, we're like infants here, and we need help. We know what we want to do, but we need a lot of help doing it.
Well, that's terrific. Something I'm struck by, the picture beside you probably can't see it, but it's of southern Iraq, of the 7th Cavalry, pausing here because there was enemy fire ahead. And you can see the difference in terrain from southern Iraq and northern Iraq. It's so green where you are and so brown in southern Iraq.
And so cold here too, Carol. The temperatures dipped way below freezing. We didn't get much sleep anyway. We're watching the air war. But the climate is incredibly different. As you said, there are rolling green hills behind us. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. Beautiful streams and rivers, and the mountains are absolutely spectacular. Quite a difference from the desert terrain down south.
Yeah, and it's very hot down south too. You said you were watching the bombing on television. Were any of the Kurds present watching with you? And if so, what was their reaction?
No, we don't have a television out here. In fact, we barely have battery-powered radio. We actually could see the glow of the bombing that was happening in Kirkuk. We're about 40 kilometers from there, so we could see that happen. And also the Iraqi troops that are just about 2 kilometers away from us opened up with their anti-aircraft fire. So we got a little show of our own from here, and we were able to watch it directly. We couldn't see the bombs drop, but we could see the glow from their aftermath.
All right,
as well as the anti-aircraft fire. They're all excited, when they actually see this. I mean, they want to see Saddam Hussein go in a big way.
All right, Kevin Seitz, you stay safe, reporting from northern Iraq this morning.
All right, now if you are just joining us, there is an ongoing conflict right now in southeastern Iraq, the town of Qasr, also apparently further on the road to Baghdad, on the road to Basra, I should say. We're going to check in right now with Chris Plant at the Pentagon. Chris, before we get to that, let's just talk briefly about this helicopter. Apparently an accident that occurred shortly ago. What can you tell us about that?
Well, it was at about 4:30 a.m. local time in the Persian Gulf, Anderson. Two British H-3 Sea King helicopters had taken off from a ship operating in the region, a British ship, and a short time after departing the ship, they apparently collided in flight and crashed into the Persian Gulf. Aboard were 3 British crew members on each helicopter, and 1 American was aboard on one of the helicopters also. It's unclear right now whether the American was a member of the U.S. military or a civilian, perhaps a contractor. Details are sketchy at this point, and we're still waiting for some additional details on that. Search and rescue helicopters were launched off of nearby ships almost immediately, and search and rescue divers in the water at the scene of the crash very, very quickly after the incident, yet it's still believed that all 7 people aboard were killed.
No, Chris, I know it's obviously it's 3:52 a.m. at the Pentagon right now here on the East Coast, so there is not a lot of information being given out. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Some of them you probably won't be able to answer, and that's fine. We are getting word, you may have seen Christian Amanpour, Jason Bellini reporting in the last hour from Qasr, pockets of resistance still being mopped up. We haven't heard from them about 20 minutes or so. Not sure if those pockets of resistance still exist. Likely they are. Jason Bellini reporting Marines going in the Old Port House building to building. They have not yet moved on to tankers to search those. And then we just got this report from Reuters, which says that U.S. Marine tanks battled Iraqi forces on the western outskirts of Basra on Saturday. Quotes a Marine Captain Andrew Bergen saying, "We are attacking Iraqi forces, all of which are west of Basra. I would certainly say it is a major battle." Again, that a Reuters report. CNN has not been able to independently confirm it yet. I'm assuming you haven't heard anything fresh on this. Have you heard anything from the Pentagon?
Not a lot in the way of detail, Anderson. We are aware here that there is apparently a take battle taking place. The Marines took up positions west of Basra yesterday in the early on in the ground offensive. They have staked out that position since early yesterday morning, pushing people back who were attempting to leave Basra, asking them to stay in Basra, hoping there that there would be a peaceful entry into the city. This is Basra in the south is a largely Shiite city, and the Shiites have suffered under the regime of Saddam Hussein. They look forward, for the most part, to the removal of the Saddam Hussein regime. Move on Basra was not expected to be very problematic, but outside of Basra, they've apparently run into some resistance from Iraqi forces, not all of whom are surrendering, although there have been thousands of troops that have surrendered to U.S. and British forces. Some are, in fact, putting up a fight. There have been reports of exchange of tank rounds between U.S. and Iraqi forces. It's not clear right now whether these are Republican Guard forces. There have been some reports that there were Republican Guard forces down in that area. But clearly tank battles taking place, some conflict, perhaps more than the planners had expected in southern Iraq, where most of the soldiers there, the Iraqi soldiers, are conscripts, they're draftees. They're not treated very well, they're not paid well, they're not fed well, they're not equipped or trained well for the most part, but there were also reports that Baghdad had sent political officers out into the field to marry up, if you will, with the forces in the field, and in an effort to compel them to fight when the American troops came in. So there have been some clashes yesterday, as you know. The taking of the oil fields in the south led to 2 fatalities from the U.S. Marine Corps. So there is some fighting going on, even as troops move toward Baghdad from a number of directions.
And Chris, just so you know, the viewers on the right-hand side of our screen are seeing a tanker probably off the port of Qasr. Again, there's both an old port and a new port. Christian Amanpour is reporting the last hour the new port is secured largely by British forces. It is under their authority at this hour. We heard from Jason Bellini in the old port, about a mile away from the new port. There are still pockets of resistance. We saw Cobra helicopters circling overhead. We heard from Jason reports of Marines going building to building. At last word, Jason was saying that those tankers, which you're seeing a tanker right there in your picture, had not yet been searched. Some of the tankers that were both in the water offshore and in the port not yet being searched. Let's just talk a little bit, though, Chris, about the significance both of Qasr and of Basra, and the significance both in terms of tactically, Qasr, I assume, being the place where U.S. military was hoping to get humanitarian assistance through, it being a port, very important strategically, and also Basra, just in terms of going to a place where the reception was, but from all predictions, going to be quite receptive. Largely, as you mentioned, a Shiite community. They had been an uprising there after the last Gulf War, an uprising that was brutally repressed by Saddam's regime. So the hope, I suppose, on the part of Pentagon planners was that there would be pictures of people of troops being greeted with open arms, with thanks and praise. It very well may happen, but there is an alteration to that plan going on right now.
Well, that certainly appears to be the case. We did see some video that came out of Basra earlier today where Marines were in part of downtown Basra, a fairly large city. It's Iraq's second largest city, and Marines were being received fairly warmly, actually, by members of the Shiite community there in Basra. They joined in with the Marines in tearing down a poster, a placard of Saddam Hussein. And it appeared that at least where these Marines were in this large city, there was no resistance, and they were being welcomed. It is, in fact, something that the Pentagon planners had hoped to see. They hoped to see more of that, maybe even cheering in the streets. They wanted these images to get out to the public early on in an effort to show that they were liberating and not coming to conquer or dominate Iraq. As is being put out by the regime of Saddam Hussein.
All right.
They're getting a little bit of that, but clearly there is some combat taking place. I think that this is outside of Basra, not in Basra. But some Iraqi troops clearly are fighting.
That is the report, and fighting apparently in civilian outfits, at least in Qasr and places. Chris Plant, live at the Pentagon. Thanks very much. Carol?
And Kristen, you were talking about casualties. Well, of course, word came early Friday that Operation Iraqi Freedom has claimed its first coalition casualties. Our Thelma Gutierrez reports from Camp Pendleton.
The flag at Camp Pendleton flies at half-staff. 3 of the 4 U.S. coalition casualties in Iraq were from Camp Pendleton. They died along with another American and 8 British soldiers when their CH-46 transport helicopter crashed and burned near the Iraqi border. Officials say caused by mechanical failure. The pilot was 30-year-old Captain Ryan Beaupre.
We just were scared that something like this would happen.
He is mourned by family in his hometown of Bloomington, Illinois.
He did always want to fly. He thought that he could do more as a person, and said that he was going to join the Marine Corps.
Also killed in the helicopter crash, 36-year-old Major Jay Oben of Waterville, Maine, 25-year-old Corporal Brian Kennedy of Houston, Texas, and 29-year-old Staff Sergeant Kendall Watersby of Baltimore, Maryland.
George Bush, take a good look at this, man, because you took my only son away from me.
His father angrily blamed George W. Bush.
You lose your only son and child, you don't really know what's really going on, but what they tell you.
When anyone loses a member of their family, it's not something that's taken lightly, and we mourn the loss of these Marines.
Before the end of the second day of the ground invasion, 2 more Marines were killed in action at this family diner in Fort Stewart, Georgia. Military families, many with relatives serving in the Gulf, watch nervously as the war unfolds, hoping there will be no more casualties, but somehow knowing it will not be the end.
I just hope they get back safe, do a good job. I know they've all been trained to do it, and just do your job and get back home safe.
Get it over with and bring them home.
Thelma Gutierrez, CNN, Camp Pendleton, California.
Well, the story right now is in southeastern Iraq near Qasr, both in Qasr and on the road to Basra. Let's go to Marty Savage with the Marines. Marty?
we were on a routine mission. It was basically that there had been a fight with armor amongst the Marines that are out near Basra. We were coming up on the position near this small village here where they were planning to now blow up the armor that they had captured. As we were patrolling through this very street here, an RPG flew right past us and impacted into the village here. That immediately caught the attention of everyone, including ourselves. Now you can see that the Marines have fanned out here. They have another blocking position over here with a 50 cal that is monitoring this street to make sure that no one moves up in the meantime. And what they're trying to do is rig demolition charges to these tanks. You may see, Spudge, if you pan even a little farther, you're going to see there's an Iraqi tank over there. It was abandoned at this point. They are rigging it for demolition. There are about 4 tanks like this. As you can see, they're embedded in the ground, dug in. That's what made them difficult to spot. And they're along this earthen berm here. Come back this way. It's another one with a balloon that is poised on top of the shore. This one has a 255. They're a fairly old model still, but they hit it by surprise. They can't have the effect of the plane they're dug in. So it's a complicated situation we face right now. One, security, force protection, as they're referring to it here. Trying to figure out who took the pot shot at this Marine unit, and then also trying
just after midnight and lasted for about 3 hours, so we got back before dawn. I've been talking to some of the pilots this morning who flew on the...
Okay, Carl, I'm sorry. You're listening to Sahaf...
Mohammed Sahaf, the Iraqi Information Administrator.
Sahid al-Sahaf, the Information Administrator.
To that nation, and during this time, the great leader Saddam Hussein will address our nation and our heroic armed forces and to connect with his soldiers and to show them the path for victory after he consolidated the path of justice. His Excellency, the leader, President Saddam Hussein, talking to you.
What you are watching is a broadcast from Iraqi television just a moment ago, and we didn't really get any preparation for this, which is why we broke into Carl Panholt. You saw the Iraqi Information Minister, Mohammed Saeed al-Sahaf, saying that Saddam Hussein was going to be making some sort of a statement currently shortly.
Now, we don't, one important factor to note, we don't know if these are live pictures or tape pictures, but we do know the Information Minister of Iraq introduced Saddam Hussein, so we're expecting him shortly.
And of course we will bring that to you live. There will be a lot of people very closely watching this, both at home and in the corridors of power in the United States and throughout the world, watching to see what Saddam Hussein looks like at this point, what he says, and trying to glean any kind of information they can out of his location. Let's listen in.
In the name of God, the most compassionate, when the victory comes from God and you witness the people coming to the religion of God in waves, praise the Lord and ask forgiveness. O great nation, the great mujahideen in our armed forces, peace be upon you. We know, and all of us in this patient and great nation knows how we have tried to show goodwill to the extent to where that some might have blamed us or found it strange that we showed so much patience and how we responded to what we responded to, despite the fact that it did not show weakness, and to show that the motives of the two administrations, the British and the American, aided by the Zionist administration, presenting new pretexts every day since the ceasefire in 1991 until the war that started today. Those decisive days which we live today, and where the Mujahideen and the great people of Iraq are contributing and showing their bravery, that they deserve the victory from God Almighty as was promised against the enemies of God and humanity. And we are entitled to. It's our duty to be proud, as the believers should be, to the heroic deeds that is being demonstrated by our great heroes today. We have always responded, even when we were asked to do things that they were illegitimate. So the sanctions and the blockade on our nation would be lifted, and after they run out of excuses and pretexts, the invaders came to reveal their true colors and showing their real intention, their evil intentions, which was not surprising to us. And you know, brothers, that it's always been our aim to avoid evil, but when evil comes to us armed with the sword of destruction, then we have no choice. Today you're standing, oh, you glorious Iraqis, men and women, and you heroes in our armed forces. Today you standing in a position that would please the friend and would anger the enemy and all the infidels. But you will be victorious against your enemies, and you are causing them to suffer. You rely on your God, and now it's clear to everyone that the aggression and the unjust is clear to everyone. In 1991, the aggression against our nation, the victory is soon. These decisive days, for you Iraqis, are in line with what God has ordered you, to cut their throats, and those who are the believers will be victorious. These decisive days, the enemy tried not using missiles and fighter jets as they did before. This time they sent their infantry troops. This time they have come to invade and occupy your land. And if the American and the British in this battle, they've been avoiding to meet you face to face, and they've been using their fighters in most cases. These forces this time has invaded our land, and everywhere it goes it faces resistance, and every time it advances and leaves the desert behind it, it finds the Iraqis surrounding it and opening fire and resisting it. The members of the party and the tribes and the Fidayeen and the armed forces, everyone has been heroic in their resistance. Therefore, after they underestimated you Iraqis, now they've come on land. This attempt is our chance to incur losses on them. They are in a dilemma. They are in trouble now. Hit them and strike them. You Mujahideen, heroes, strike against your enemy with fear. You great Iraqi, inspired by the spirit of jihad that you have, and strike them until they come to the conclusion that they're not in a position to continue with their crimes against you and against humanity. And then you will have your stability, pride and victory. And to our martyrs, who will be rewarded with paradise. As for you, you will be rewarded by God, and the lesson that you are teaching to the enemy will make him hesitant, unable after that to dare to challenge you or challenge humanity again. Strike them and strike evil, so evil will be defeated, and all those mothers will be able to sleep in peace, all those fathers and children that have been terrorized by the aggression, and all the eyes of the great people will sleep in peace, and your deeds and your jihad will send them back in disappointment and despair. And to the Arabs and to all great people around the world, we promise you what we have been promised by God in our struggle with the enemies of humanity, that God will support His